Happy Thursday, everyone. Happy Easter, everybody. Okay, let's get into this. And let me see where we are. Okay, so we're right before Easter, and tonight we're going to talk about death and surviving death. So before I get into that, I just want to thank everybody for signing up for the groups and the programs that are there. And Jasper is trying to do something in the background.
Sorry.
So I think I have a couple of groups left in June, guys. So if anybody else who wants to sign up for them, they can send a message over to the office and they'll get back to you. But tonight I want to talk about surviving death because it's a big topic that I get a lot here in the office, and it's such a strange concept about surviving death and what does that even mean. Well, when I come up with these topics, it isn't always me. So my guide, who I've mentioned before in my previous videos, his name is Isaac, and I asked him what should our topic be, and he says surviving death. So here we are. So I got to give you a little background on this, and just I remember asking earlier on in my career, Isaac, how do people overcome the loss of someone? How does somebody move beyond death? And his response to me, and it's a response that I get from a lot of people on the other side, or a lot of souls on the other side, is death is for the living, meaning that the physical body is what we're grieving, the coulda, shoulda, woulda, and what could have been. But the soul has passed over to the other side, and now they see us stuck. So their job is to try and help us move forward through grief. So the surviving death is really about learning how to live without the person that you have lost and still function in the daily world. Because most people that I meet who have lost their significant other don't want to be here any longer. Or if they've lost their child, don't want to be here any longer. And that may sound selfish to people that haven't gone through this, but I meet lots of people who just don't want to go on any longer because they've been in this life with this individual, and it's either cut abruptly, or if you're a caretaker, if you're caring for a parent and you're constantly on the wheel, and then all of a sudden that parent is gone or the loved one is gone and your life comes to a complete halt, but your body's still moving. You still feel like you're going through this process. So one of the things that I learned through the souls on the other side is, Phil, when we cross over, I just had somebody here tonight. I've been here all day, so I'm trying to go through my readings. But when we cross over, our job is to reflect. So the soul reflects on the life that it didn't have. And I just had somebody in, and rather than discuss their reading, but their husband had said, Phil, I had crossed over. I had got to reflect on the life that I was living, or the end of the life that I was living. And now that I was able to do that, I see the impact that it's had on my loved ones. I see the impact that it's had on my wife, or my family, and things like that. And the soul tries to help us get through the grief. How do you get through grief? Because you've just lost someone or some person or something that is so important to you that you couldn't imagine living your life without them. You get through grief simply by saying, I'm grieving. And it does not have to be hysterics. It doesn't have to be a complete bedridden situation, but it can simply be that I'm wearing a mask right now, I'm putting on a show, but inside I feel empty and I feel hurt, and I don't know how to describe it to people, because when people ask me how am I doing, the normal response is okay. So because people are afraid to share, I'm a wreck. I don't know how to go any further. It's been several years and I don't know what to do. Hi Beth. It's been so much pain that I'm in that I don't want to tell people any longer that I'm in grief, because they think I should be past this. And there is no past this. And what I mean by grief is there's no clock on it. You cannot accelerate someone else's pain. You can't make it go faster. You can't make it go slower. And most importantly, until the person is ready to go into the grief state, you cannot make somebody grieve. So I find a lot of people that come through who say, Phil, I haven't even gotten a message from the other side. And it's because they're not ready to even go into the grief state yet. Meaning that I know the person that I've lost is gone, but I have to function. I don't want to think about it. So we keep playing these little mind tricks with us, which delay things. And then eventually there's a boom. And you could simply be sitting on the beach and there's just this complete breakdown because the grief has now reached the surface, because we can no longer avoid it. So when we enter into the grief stage, it can be debilitating. It can absolutely collapse us, and you can have a normal day one day, and the next day your life comes to a complete halt. I often meet this when people have lost their children. It's the life they had before and the life that they had after. And the same thing for spouses, or the same thing for parents. We can't compare one's love for another person. It's just impossible. But for a lot of people, they don't know how to move forward, because particularly parents who lose children, they feel that if they smile and they're laughing and they're joking, that they have forgotten about the soul that they lost. But it's the other side wants you to move forward. They want you to laugh. They want you to experience life. They want you to love, because as we grieve, they are grieving. And holidays are typically a very difficult time for people, because you have to put on a smile. It's Easter, it's Passover, we got to go see families. And I don't want to be a Debbie Downer and say, I feel horrible, or I feel, I'm not feeling great, or I've been depressed for so long, because it's at a dinner and you don't want to talk about this. So people then suppress the grief even more. But when people ask you, how are you feeling? It's okay to say, I don't feel good. I feel sad. I feel lost. I feel trapped. So you don't always have to be the strong one. You can also allow people to come into your life and to help you with grief. You can lean on other people and share it with them. And one of the things that I find a very helpful tool, and the other side often says this to me, is try to meet other people who have similar grief, because that way that individual understands you. If you've lost a child and the other person you're talking to hasn't, they can empathize or sympathize with you. But two people that have lost children can understand each other and understand the process that they're going through. The same thing with two people that have lost spouse or whatever it may be. So you want to find somebody that is similar to your loss, so that they understand you and you can get this out. But I will tell you, many people, and the other side tells me this often, Phil, the person, whoever I'm talking to, is trying to block out grief, meaning they're not allowing themselves to experience it. They don't want to break down. They don't want to shed a tear. They don't want to let go, because if they do that, they're going to fall apart. So however that fall apart is, we don't necessarily know when we're in grief. We're afraid to go into that stage. What if I can't get up? What if I fall? What if I let go of it? I've nowhere else to go after this. So it can be a very challenging time. The one thing I want to mention is just try to be mindful of people who are in a grief stage or who've lost someone. Because a year has passed does not mean anything has changed. Remember, the first year of grief, you're surrounded with people. I'm not sure what's going on here. You're surrounded with people and you have support. Then year 2 comes, and the people that were around you think you're doing better because you're putting on a mask and you've learned how to do that. So they start to distance themselves a bit, and now you start coming into the realization that, oh my God, this is for real. And year 3 is often the hardest for people that I hear. Or year 2 can be hard, and year 3 they come into acceptance, depending on the individual and which way it goes. But it's very important that we understand that it's okay to grieve. It's okay to cry. It's okay to show our weaknesses. It's okay to let people know that we're hurting. It's okay to come up to someone in a supermarket and ask them, how are you doing? I'm here for you if you need to talk. If you need to say anything, I'm always here for you. And then there's a type of grief that people suffer that they don't want to talk about. If their loved one died of a death that people view to be negative, why it's an overdose, or if it's drunk driving, or if it's a car crash, whatever the situation may be, and they feel that they can't share their grief because of X. Well, remember, you lost a child, you lost a spouse, you lost someone. So you love that individual. No matter how they passed, you have the right to grieve, and you have the right to experience that and share that with people. So there is no clock on grief. But what the other side does have a clock on is how long we stay stuck. And what they want to do is push us through this process. They want to help us as much as we can not to remain stuck, but in order to function on this plane, because their job on the other side becomes trying to help us. So as we are crying, they are crying. And as they start to go into a better place, or we start going into a better place, they start transitioning into a better place. And as that process takes place, then this is when signs start coming. Then this is when dreams start coming. This is when communication starts coming from the other side. Again, crown chakra shuts off when you're in grief, so you're not getting any knowledge that's coming through. So it's important to allow yourself to go through the stages of grief. Everybody does it differently. There's not a single way to do it. But what I will tell you is I've yet to meet a soul who's told me to tell the individual that's alive, don't move forward. I often get people that say, I don't want you remarrying, but I get things like that, but, or don't let go of the house or whatever. But grief, and thank you, Corrine, is a very slow process. And it's also a very personal process. So I find a lot of people saying, it's been 2 years, why are you still crying? And it's because you can't wash away 20, 30, 40 plus years in a year. You can't just wash away all of those memories in such a short period of time. It's impossible. If you had your child for a year, 5 years, 20 years, whatever it is, if 5 years will go by, you're not going to get any better. You will get better. It's a slow process. But what happens is most people are afraid that if they're laughing, they think the other side is going to be upset with them, that they've forgotten about them. And actually what it does is it brings joy to the other side, which opens up the crown chakra that allows you to get communication and for them to continue to come into your life to let you know they're okay. Another big question I get is, Phil, I'm not getting communication. In the grief process, you're not going to get much because you're completely, absolutely overwhelmed with earthly stuff and the things that have taken place, and also the emptiness that you're feeling. And the emptiness that you're feeling cannot be filled no matter what you try to do. You can't shop it, you can't drink it, you can't do anything with it. It is going to be there. It's part of who we are. So I'm going to open it up to questions. I see Jasper has a hand up, and go right ahead.
So I don't want to allow joy into my life. I feel like when I do, it's disrespecting my loved one, like I don't care.
And that's a question I get is, Phil, if I'm laughing and my loved one is not seeing me cry, do they think that I don't care? And the other side is super aware that you have to live life on life's terms. And therefore, they want you to be happy. They don't want you to stay stuck. They don't want you to be bedridden. They don't want you to be locked in this place. They know that you're grieving, but they also need you to be happy because they know one day you're going to be reunited again. Go ahead, Jasper.
So what are some of the first steps that I take towards healing? Would you suggest something like therapy?
So one of the first steps I say about healing is acknowledging your grief. So it's not necessarily therapy for people, but it's acknowledging that I am in grief. Second state is accepting it, and that comes in time, meaning that the person is no longer coming back. And then the third state is allowing this to filter through your chakra system, allowing the process to take place. A lot of people actually go into therapy, or they go into, what's the word I'm looking for? Compassionate friends and other support groups in order to help them through these things. And it's a great tool in order to help you. I always tell people that when you're in such profound grief, throw as much at it as you possibly can, because you never know what's going to stick. So you may want to try grief counseling. You may want to become part of a group. You may want to become an activist. I know people that have lost their children and became activists for drugs and are Mothers Against Drunk Driving and things like that. So that's essential, but we each have our role. Go ahead, Jasper.
So Carrie says, my son passed away at 21 years old on July 17th, 2016. I received all the signs, so I know he is here, but I do miss him in the physical, even though he was not happy here. I feel guilty from time to time if I laugh or try to feel happy.
Carrie, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. And thank you for writing this question down, because I feel guilty when I'm happy. And even though your son was unhappy and he struggled here on earth, it is a natural thing for you to feel happy. But to feel guilty, but understand that he wants you to feel happy because he's now in a better place and he's now at rest and he's now out of his unhappiness. So they would never want you to stay stuck, but it's okay to smile. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to free yourself from pain. You'll never forget. You're never ever going to forget the person that you lost. So the whole remains the same. The pain just subsides. And that's the best way I can describe grief to you. Go ahead, Jasper.
Jane asks, can our loved one visit more than one person at the same time?
Yes, our loved one can come to multiple people at the same time and try to send out like this blast email, but this blast visit that I'm on the other side, I'm here, I'm safe. I think for siblings it happens a lot as well, meaning that if a parent passes over, multiple siblings can get a visit from the same person. Go ahead, Jasper.
Corrine says, to handle the grief at the holidays of my dad not being there, we go around the table and share stories and memories of him, and he is at the table.
And that's a perfect way. And thank you very much for saying that, Kareen. And people will also set a place setting for the person they've lost in the beginning, because it helps bring them the memories. It makes them feel comforted that they're there. Again, people looking on the outside would think that's weird, but it's not. We all have different roles of how we're going to get through our grief. We all have different roles of what works for us and what works for another person. So we should relate and not compare. And I think that's a very important thing to do. It's hard for me. I was raised Catholic, so, I don't go to church, but I became spiritual over time. But one of the things that always stuck with me was, a soul had said this to me many years over, the hardest part was not Jesus being on the cross. It was that Mary had to watch her child suffer on the cross. And she had to witness her child die, regardless if we believe in the Bible or not, regardless if Jesus was real or not. But the bottom line is that for a parent or a sibling and or a husband or wife losing someone and not being able to help them, the pain that we suffer is much greater than the soul that is about to pass over. So while Jesus believed that he was going to heaven or whatever the situation may have been, Mary had to sit here and say, how am I going to get through my world where my only child being gone? And I always remembered that, because I always think of mothers that they carry the children for those 9 months. There's a special bond. It's just, there's no way around it, guys. I'm sorry, dads, that you're out there. I know we have special bonds with our children, but for a mother, it's a different kind of bond. And when they lose that child, or when you lose somebody that you're so attached to, it is just, it is a beginning and end, meaning that your life, what it used to be like, and then your life when you get that knock on the door. And that's the two separations. Go ahead, Jasper.
So Kathy asks, how do I get through my son's wedding without his sister? I don't want to cry for not being there, but I feel like I will.
And it's perfectly okay to cry. It's perfectly okay to cry, but understand that she'll be there witnessing the wedding. So understand that souls, when they're over there, they're going to witness a wedding. They're going to see everything that's going on. So they're part of major life events. They're part of the journeys. They're part of that. Someone just asked me, can grief manifest into physical pain? Yes. And grief can manifest into disease. 100%. Depending on how long this goes on, remember, the lungs store grief, the kidneys store fear, the liver stores anger. So depending on how long this can go on, these shirts, this process can manifest into physical pain, and then it can manifest into illness. I've watched it manifest into illness. Go ahead, Jasper.
Danny and Tracy asks, I've been out of the denial stage for 2 years, and never have I had a good visit from my fiance, and it's been 5 years now. I spent the first 3 years in deep grief. I recently remarried. Does that mean I won't ever get a good visit now?
No, it does not mean that you won't get a good visit now. It just simply means that the soul is helping you through the process to meet somebody else, is letting you go through. They'll always be connected with you. Remember, guys, no news is good news. So if you're not getting signs from the other side, it means everything in your life is going exactly the way it should be going. So that's a very important thing to understand, that if you're not hearing from the other side, it means that they're happy in the place that you're in. So they don't come through to entertain you. They only come through to let you know this is the easiest, smoothest way down your path. And that's why they give us signs. So it's a bizarre thing, because we're asking them to be there. I'll give you an example. My client who just came, my last client today, she had lost her husband. She said, listen, if you're really out there, could you just give me a sign today? I'm really struggling with him. She just lost him in December. And as she goes in to get her sandwich, her breakfast sandwich, there was a cute little dog. And she asked the woman the name of the dog, and it was the same name as her husband. And that's a perfect example of a sign. So it's the other side saying, I'm here, I'm listening to you, I'm always with you, I'm always going to be with you, helping you through it. Go ahead, Jasper.
So Maureen asks, if a person committed suicide, how do they pass over?
So if someone passes from suicide, it's no different than if you pass from cancer. It's no different than if you pass, suddenly. Everyone crosses over to the other side. I know everyone's going to go and bring religion into this, but I'm sorry, religion doesn't necessarily fit into this, because spirituality and religion, not the same thing. But everyone crosses to the other side. So we can choose to end our contract. I've met people that are severely mentally ill, who suffer horribly with depression, so on and so forth. And I know for those people, each breath, and they have told me, actually, Phil, each breath that I took was exhausting. that they couldn't bear to be on earth any longer. The God that I know, the being that I know, the souls that keep constantly coming through to me have never mentioned that they're punished for something they've done. Punishment for us is when we cross over, I guess if I had to use the word punishment, is reflecting back on your life and not doing the things that you could have done or that you should have done. But remember, mental illness and free will play into play, so you're not punished for things like that. I hope that answers your question. Go ahead, Jasper.
Jasenia says, my cousin's son died when he was only 6, and it marked 2 years ago, a week ago, and she's still very depressed. Being that young when he died, and is he in a good place and looking out for her and his sisters?
So how it works when a young soul passes over, first I would imagine his mother's in a terrible place. It's only been 2 years. And secondly, when you lose a child so young, what the soul does is it still interacts with the siblings and or the parents in order to try to help them through the process. So the soul will come and visit the siblings, or they'll come visit the parents. And then secondly, what the young soul tries to do is continue to engage to guide the rest of the family members down their paths, even though that they passed over young. So each birthday they have, they'll continue to age to 33, or they'll go back to 33. Go ahead, Jasper.
Justin says, I have a habit of bottling everything up. How can I show my emotions more easily?
Try. And what I mean by that is, don't be afraid to show your emotions, Justin. I think it's essential that when you're afraid to show... That's the one thing Jasper was very helpful with me with, is that I tend to, I don't know, really... I'm so used to doing this job that I can be very unemotional, and I have to be that way because when I start at 10 o'clock, I have an 11, 12. So when the next person's coming in, I'm not emotionally connected to my previous reading. Otherwise, it'll help me, it'll interfere with my next reading. But years of doing that, I've shut myself down. So when Jasper came into my life, it really helped me open up and to take a chance. So what I'm saying to you is, how you show our emotions is we simply try. We simply try. And there's no wrong way to show emotion. Well, you don't want to show anger, but showing positive emotion, it's something that you just have to say out loud. And I always tell people, I do not hang up the phone unless I say, I love you. So whomever I'm talking to, meaning that they're close to my life, my brothers or my friends and things like that. So I always say I love you, because you never know when you're going to talk to someone else again. Go ahead, Jasper.
Meg says, I saw you for a reading years ago. You told me that my father was not able to move on because of his reasons. This has haunted me for years. How can I know he's okay? I think it has made it difficult for me to accept his passing, knowing he isn't with my mom.
Well, I think, and I don't, the reading was so long ago, Megan, but what happens is in the beginning, people are not okay when they pass over, depending on the type of death that they had. I'm sure now, all these years later, the soul crosses over. Again, the soul chooses not to cross over right away or to cross over right away, depending on what's happening. But as time goes on, they settle in, they cross over, and then everything's good. They don't stay stuck. Go ahead, Jasper.
Shannon says, or asks, is it possible to bring past relatives to come visit you by bringing their photos or their belongings into the house?
So what you're asking is, if I bring in other photos and stuff, all you have to do is think of the soul. If you think of the soul that you lost, they'll come to you. They know that you're thinking of them. So you don't necessarily need photos, although it does help you connect with the other side, but they don't need it in order to come visit you. So if it brings you comfort, then you can do it. But otherwise, it's not a necessity for the other side. Go ahead, Jasper. Someone just asked why 33, and I'm going to say this again. I know it's a tricky subject, but this from what I know, everyone's 33. You either age to 33 or go back to 33. We believe it's because the year Christ died. Don't jump on me. I did not make the rules. So all I'm telling you is everyone's 33 on the other side. Or at least that's how they show themselves to me. Go ahead, Jasper.
Margaret asks, I have been waking up suddenly at 3:30 in the morning and hear as if someone is home. Is that a sign from my brother who passed away recently? Yeah,
it's very possible. So anytime after 3, it's often when people get communication from the other side. But anytime after that, it's when you're in a deep sleep, or we go into REM sleep, and that's when the other side is able to help us get into, to let us know we're there. Again, I talked about sometimes you feel them sitting on the bed, sometimes we feel them touching us or putting their hand on us just to try and let us know that we're okay. So signs come in many different forms. Go ahead, Jasper.
Betty asks, can our deceased loved ones move objects? If you lose something, can they help find it for you?
So yes, the other side can move objects, and if you lose something, they can help you with objects, and they can also take objects. And they will do that in order to just try to get your attention. So it can be one of the three things, but the other side will often take things and they'll move things in order to help you just know that they're there and that they're with you. So going back to this again, guys, this grief process that we're in, and I want to stress this again, don't be afraid to tell people that you don't feel okay. Don't be afraid to tell people that that you're hurting. Don't be afraid to reach out for help. And don't isolate yourself. And I know it's the most natural thing to do for people that are in extreme grief, that they don't want to be around people, they don't want to see people. But isolating yourself is only going to make it worse. But more importantly, you're cutting out your family, and you're cutting out the other side from trying to communicate with you. So we don't want to isolate, and we don't want to cut off. But the other side will always get through to us in one way or another. Go ahead, Jasper.
Danielle says, I've never dreamed of my brother or my baby. Why?
I'm the same way. It's either some people get communication or they don't. I know you're like, Phil, you're a medium. I can't use my gift for myself. Some people just don't go into the dream state. Some people don't allow themselves to connect, and other people get it left and right. It's maddening. Go ahead, Jasper.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mike says, I had my wedding ring moved and it reappeared. It has to be the other side.
Yeah, Mike, you should probably get rid of that wedding ring. I would say, Mike, it's time to let go of that wedding ring. So it's time to do away with it. So it's but yes, it would be the other side, and then they're trying to communicate with you, because I know your particular circumstances, Mike. So I'm not going to blurt it out here on Facebook Live, but it's important. See, the other side will do things in order to get your attention. The other side will do things to make you think about individual. Is this good for me? Is this not good for me? Should I be out of this? You will always get warning signs before there's an explosion, before there's an event, unless it's contractual and the person's supposed to pass at that time. But it is important that we try to stay conscious, and we talked about this before. Staying conscious means staying present, being where your feet are, and that's how we get communication. Joanne's asked a question.
Joanne asks, why is it that I continually go back to when he was dying and feel that sadness?
Joanne, people go back to the place of feeling sadness because grief and sadness releases endorphins. So as you can feel sad, and you can feel weak, and you can feel depressed, it releases endorphins, it soothes anxiety, and it's a vicious cycle that we get into. So this is why people often go back to the last memory of the person that is dying, or because it gives them this. Grief can almost be like a quilt. It can almost be like a protection against the outside world, because we don't want to deal with it. And that's why the other side is so pushy about helping us get through grief and saying, don't stay stuck, don't stay here. I'm in a good place. I need you to be in a good place in order for me to be in a good place. It's not about letting go. It's about accepting that the person is passed over. And that's why some souls wait for the people to leave and then they pass, or some souls do it in front of the individual. But you'll always go back to that, because that's where your memory is locked. That's when your chapter ended, when the passing of your husband happened. So that your life ended at that point, and now he's trying to help you move forward. Pamela's asked a question, Jasper.
Pamela just says, I wish I had seen you 16 years ago for a reading and advice for my grief and loss. It wouldn't have taken me so long to deal with it. It has gotten better.
And you know what? And it's one of those things. It takes what it takes. We don't always have an outlet for grief. We don't know how to deal with it. We don't know where to put it. 16 years ago was a different time. How to deal with grief. We didn't have the support groups that we have now. But the one thing that I'll tell you is, holding on to grief is not going to help you get communication from the other side. Holding on to grief is going to keep you stuck and prevent you from moving forward in the way that you need to. So what we want to do here, and this is what I'm going to end it with, is do not be afraid to grieve. Do not be afraid to talk about your loved ones that have passed over. Don't be afraid to mention them at Easter or Passover or anything that you're doing for these holidays. And most importantly, do not be afraid to show your emotions and say your emotions. If you're feeling great, you say you're feeling great. If you're feeling sad, you're saying you're feeling sad. Lee Zanoni, I am going to be texting you soon. I do have a date for you. So it's essential, and don't be afraid to let people know that you're hurting, because otherwise everyone will assume that everything is okay. So I thank you. Thank you all for tuning in on this Thursday night. I want everyone to have a great Easter. I'm sorry I'm a little burnt out. It was a long day, but I will be back next Thursday. I hope this helped you guys understand just how the other side deals with grief versus how you guys deal with grief, meaning us on the human level. The soul will work through you. The soul will help you overcome grief. But if you're not willing, there's nothing they can do. Meaning that if you're unwilling to let go of your grief, meaning accept the person that has passed, the other side can't move into your life and help you through this. I love you. I'll see you all next Thursday. Happy Easter. Enjoy the beautiful weather. Talk to you soon. Bye, guys.